In this video, I want to talk about using triangles and n-gons in the context of hard surface modeling. Here I have 4 circles that look identical until we go over and turn on wireframes. Now we can see the first one is made up of quads, the second and third are made up of triangles, and the last one is just one big n-gon. It used to be really common to hear that you should use all quads when modeling, and to avoid triangles and n-gons when possible. That's definitely more true when it comes to subdivision surface modeling, which we'll talk about in the next chapter, but when it comes to hard surface modeling, that's not always the case. Let's take a look at an example here where I've used the simple deform modifier to warp all of these objects. You can see that the first one deforms quite well, because it has evenly spaced quads that crisscross and loops running in both directions. We get a nice smooth Pringle-like shape that's kind of making me hungry. On the second one though, we only have edges running directly towards the center, so we get a pinch right there in the middle, and we don't get that nice smooth blend when looked at from the side. This third one is kind of like that, but completely uneven, so it's even worse. And this last one is probably the worst of all, because it gives us the same result as the third one, but under the hood, and we can't even see where those edges are being connected whatsoever. So when it comes to deformations, evenly spaced quads definitely wins. If you're making a curved or bent surface, this is absolutely the way to go. But when you're making hard surface objects, there are a lot of other types of features to consider. For example, you might be wanting to use a bevel modifier. Well, if that's the case, this first one doesn't do a very good job at all. Because it has these really squished faces near the corners, we get a pretty bad result. Also, the bevel is fanning out rather than pointing towards the center. Whereas with this second one, everything was already pointing towards the center, and so the bevel is perfect. On the third one, we have all sorts of these small, skinny, stretched faces, and that gives us the worst result of all. Lots of overlapping, and the bevel is going in all different directions. This last one is also a perfect result, and Blender is able to bevel n-gons extremely well. So this is another great choice. Of course, you could also get a similar result with this object over here if you put an edge loop that runs all the way around outside of it. So if we hit tab to go into edit mode and select the perimeter, E to extrude and scale that up, then that would bevel just fine. But it's also worth noting that this first one has way more vertices than all of the others. If we look at our statistics, which we can enable over in the overlays and statistics, we can see that this first one has 192 triangles. It's made up of quads, but each quad under the hood is 2 triangles, and so we get a total of 192. This second one over here only has 32 triangles, so the poly count is way lower. This third one is even lower still with the triangle count of 30, and this n-gon is also 30 under the hood, because it's just trying to connect everything in the most efficient way possible. So if your use case was exporting to a game engine, you definitely wouldn't want to use the first one, you'd want to use this third one. N-gons are great while working in Blender, but you often can't export them to other programs, so you'll want to triangulate it before exporting. And a quick way to do this, by the way, is to go to the Add Modifier, Generate, and Triangulate, and that will do this work for you. And that way you can still use it as an n-gon in edit mode. I'll turn that off in edit mode so we can just see the n-gon by itself. But then in object mode, everything gets triangulated. And when you export, then this is what you'll see in your other program. I mentioned before that n-gons bevel really well in Blender, so let me show you an example of that. Here we have an object that's mostly boxy with a few bends in it, and with the top and bottom as just one big n-gon, this is beveling really well. This is essentially beveling the same as if I took this face and inset it. All of the bevels are running in the same direction as those newly created edges, and that's exactly what we want. However, if we were to connect all of these vertices together, then we might get different results. For example, if I connect this one to that one, those newly created edges are already kind of running in that direction. So if I connect them with the hotkey J, or connect a vertex path, then that doesn't really change much at all. But if I connect this vertex in that one, hit J, then it forces the edge to run in that direction and overlaps with the edge next to it, and we get a really bad result. So if you have to connect all of these edges together, then you need to find an edge that's already in the direction that the bevel is expecting. Here's where this can come into play. One of the weaknesses of n-gons in Blender is that they can't have complete holes. So if I were to use my knife tool, I'll hit K and I'll just draw a box here. If I hit enter to make this cut, then you'll see that we have some edges automatically connecting to the sides. I'll hit E to extrude, so we get a bevel around the edges, and that actually worked surprisingly well. Most of the time when I do this, I get a completely garbage result. For example, this vertex might be connected to this one, and we get a absolutely horrible bevel. The trick with holes is that you need at least 2 edges connecting them from the sides, so that you split one side of the face and the other. So if we only need 2 edges, we can pick whichever ones are already kind of going in the right direction. For example, this vertex here is already sort of pointing towards this one, so I'll hit J and connect those. You can see it offset it just a little bit, but if I increase my segments such that that's right in the middle, then everything lines up and that looks perfect. This vertex and that one look pretty good when connected, but this one is being forced in that direction a little bit too much. So what I'd probably do here is just add a new edge loop to this side and connect that vertex there. We could also try to connect this one with one over here. And that doesn't look quite as good, so I'll just create a new edge for that. And then we can go ahead and make the rest of these just one big n-gon. So now we have a hole with nicely beveled edges. And now you know that when it comes to creating holes in your geometry and beveling them, you'll probably have to do some work figuring out which vertices of the hole should connect with which vertices of the perimeter. Like I mentioned before though, the weakness of n-gons is that they have to be a completely flat surface. If I move this up even just slightly, then things start to break. If you have a more complex object, you can select everything that should be a flat surface, and then you can either scale it to 0 along the z-axis or whatever axis you're working on. That will also flatten it out. Or if you're working at an arbitrary angle, there's an add-on that you can use to do this really fast. You can go to Edit and Preferences, head to Extensions, and this might look a little bit different in your version of Blender because I think it's going to evolve a bit over time. But if you type in Loop Tools, go ahead and download that and enable it. It'll be in your add-ons. I'll turn that on. And now when I select these faces, I can just right-click, go to Loop Tools, and choose Flatten. So that works even if it's at, some crazy angle like that. The Flatten command works really well. So all that to say, n-gons should be completely flat if you choose to use them. So to sum everything up, quads works really well for deformations and curved surfaces. Triangles work really well for reducing poly count, and n-gons work really well for stopping edge loops, as well as for working with flat surfaces that have a complex perimeter.